That time of my life was really difficult. I was newly separated, and my former husband was having a difficult time coming to terms with that, and so there was a lot of tension. And at the same time, my children were for the very first time away from me for weekends, so I was very lost. I couldn't actually sleep. So I used to walk the lakeshore in Barrie, which is 5 kilometers, several times a day.
We all need a helping hand every now and then, whether it's holding open a door or donating a major organ. Everyone could use a good Samaritan at some point. Help might come from next door or 3 countries away. But what if it comes from someone or something that defies explanation? Welcome to Ghostly Encounters. I'm Lawrence Chow. Today we'll meet Kelly and Ron, 2 people who tell stories of emotional rescue by ghostly good Samaritans. Fresh from her divorce, Kelly Nichols' heart is closed for business. She's lonely and sad. But after a night out with her friends at a club, all that is about to change.
After we left the club, we went next door so my girlfriend could look for this friend of hers, and it's a deli. And I sat at the front near the doors, and she went out of my sight to the back of the restaurant to look for this fella. And it wasn't overly busy. Usually this would be full of people, either waiting for their friends or just eating a sandwich and having a drink. But it wasn't this night. It was really quiet that night. I looked around the room, and there was a guy sitting across from me in the booth, and he had a lot of food. He had like a humongous deli sandwich. He had a bowl of soup, he had a large pop, and I think he had dessert. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, right? I spoke to him, and I said, you know, have you got enough to eat there? Just kind of making a joke, but kind of being a smarty pants at the same time. And he looked over at me and he said, well, yes, this is the first meal I've had today. I'm really quite hungry. Would you like some of my sandwich? And I said, no, thanks, that's fine. I felt truly embarrassed. Here was this really nice man offering me part of his only meal of the day, and I thought it was a really nice gesture. So we chatted for a bit. He said, you know, hey, I'm Raymond. And I said, oh, hi, Raymond, I'm Kelly. And my girlfriend come buzzing up from the back. She'd found this guy, Tim, she'd been looking for, and she said she'd be 5 minutes. I think I pulled a face. I don't think she saw it, but I think I kind of rolled my eyes. And Raymond goes, is that your girlfriend? And I said, yes, she's been looking for this guy, and he's a jerk. He goes, oh, okay. I just changed the subject, and I said to him, you know, were you out tonight? And he said, yeah, and he named the place, and it was where we were. And I didn't remember seeing him there, because it's a small place. You can see everybody, right? So anyways, we chatted for a bit more. My girlfriend comes back with this friend of hers, and she said, okay, we're ready, let's go. So I looked over at Raymond, and I said, you know, it was nice meeting you. Have a good night. And we headed out. They were giving me a ride home, so we get out in front of the restaurant, and I looked over at him, and I said, you know, it's like 5 minutes to my house. Would you mind just being quiet till we get to my house? And he didn't like that. He kind of threw his arms up, and I'm not putting up with this. And he literally ran down the street like a 7-year-old. So my girlfriend throws me this look like, thanks a lot, and she chases after him. It's kind of scary standing out there in the middle of the night going, there goes my ride. And then it sort of revealed itself as a very mysterious event. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. My ride is gone that away. And Raymond came out of the restaurant just then, and he called my name. Didn't startle me, he didn't scare me. I was like, oh, I guess he's done eating. That's what I thought. And he said, is everything okay? And I said to him, well, no. I said, I think I just lost my ride. Oh, he goes, I'll give you a ride. I don't think so. Like, I don't just take rides, right? I said, no, thanks, Raymond. That's really nice. But the taxi stand is just like 3 doors up. It's okay. I'll take a taxi. I thought it was a very nice and genuine offer, but that's not something certainly the mother of young children should be accepting, or probably most women anyway. And he said my name a little differently. He kind of said it, Kelly. Let me give you a ride home. Like, you know, just quit being so silly. Let me give you a ride home. And I remember I stopped and I looked at him, like I really looked at him, like totally up and down. Really? Should I do this? And I went, oh, okay. And again, arguing in my head, saying I shouldn't be taking a ride from this person I met, 10 minutes ago. But he convinced me because he was so sincere. Raymond's car was this beaten up, like, beater of a car. It was full of papers and coffee cups. It looked like he was living in it. Like there was this big crack up the windshield. It was a mess. So we started heading off, and he asked me, he goes, what happened back there with your friend? And I said, oh, this guy is a complete jerk. He just treats her so badly. I don't know why she puts up with it. I love her. She can do much better than that. And that's when he said to me, oh, is that what happened to you? Which totally surprised me. I hadn't talked to him at all about my personal life. And I just looked at him, I said, yeah, well, something like that. Like I wasn't about to, share my personal life with this fella, right? So anyways, we sort of winding our way back, and Raymond said, oh, he goes, I just finished my meal and I'd like to have a cigarette, but my lighter's broken. And I looked down, and sure enough, there was no lighter in the lighter hole. So he said to me, do you have a lighter? I had been standing outside with a lighter in my hand because I was going to have a cigarette while I waited for a taxi. And when I got into Raymond's car, I realized it was still in my hand. And I said, no, I don't. And when I said it, I thought, what am I saying that for? Like, just give the guy a light. And he's going, you don't have a light? I'm like, no, sorry, Ray, I wish I could help you out. And I'm thinking to myself, just give him a lighter. So you see, he drives a bit more, and he goes, oh, well, I sure would like a cigarette. And I just went, oh, well. I think Raymond knew I had the lighter in my hand and didn't understand why I wouldn't pass it to him. But I think at that time, because I was so hurt, I didn't want to trust anybody to come into my space. And by then, we were very close to my house, and I said, you can just stop here. Thanks for the ride. And he looked at me, and he said in the kindest, most sincerest way, Kelly, I'm not going to hurt you. And it was really touching, actually. And I didn't know how to deal with that. Like, I didn't know how to respond to it. And I said, yeah, I know, Ray, thanks a lot for the ride. And I got out of the car. And I stepped onto the curb, and I turned around to wave goodbye, and there was no car there. And I went, what just happened here? There was a car, and it's gone. And I listened for it, and it was like 2:30 in the morning. It was really quiet. There was no traffic on the streets at all, and I would have heard a car. I didn't hear anything. I actually doubted whether I was ever in a car. It was just gone. And so I just doubted whether I was ever in a car. It was just gone. And so I just opted to go home and go to bed. When I called my girlfriend the next day and she asked where I disappeared to, and I told her Raymond had given me a ride home, it sort of revealed itself as a very mysterious event. And she's like, who? I said, well, Raymond, I was talking to him at the deli. She goes, oh, I didn't see him. Nobody else saw him except for me. My girlfriend said afterwards that was my guardian angel. And I think maybe that was true. I've often wondered why Raymond said, I'm not going to hurt you, Kelly. And I think he sensed my unwillingness to be the tiniest bit vulnerable or open. It wouldn't have hurt, I think, in hindsight, to have been friendlier and to have opened up and maybe shared some of my problems with him. After, with Raymond, I started to question myself as to why I couldn't do such a simple thing as open up my hand to somebody who needed something. And kind of think slowed things down for me a bit. Did it change my perspective on things? It may not have directly, but it may have been the start of kind of me getting a full night's sleep for the first time and kind of relaxing and just letting the guard down a little bit.
If Raymond really is a guardian angel, he is aptly named. His name has dramatic origins that mean protector and counselor. Ron Gendry is a truck driver who probably never thought he needed an angelic counselor. But like Kelly, Ron was lonely. There was something missing in his life, and it took an encounter on a windswept freeway to give him hope.
There's a lot of variables to driving a truck. A lot of them, I guess, primarily weather conditions and traffic-related things. To be quite honest with you, it can become quite lonely at times. I got dispatched to pick up some automotive parts in a suburban area of Detroit. I was asked to be there on a Saturday morning at approximately 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Upon getting to the destination, I found out that the load wasn't quite ready. So basically what I did was I sat around in the parking lot all day long. Did absolutely nothing. I reread the newspaper several times. At approximately 6 p.m. or 7 o'clock that evening, Saturday night, they finally did get me loaded. Crossed into Ontario, and I ran into a horrific snowstorm. Snow, I remember, was coming at the windshield at probably about a 45-degree angle. There was hardly anybody out on the road that night because the weather was that bad. What had happened then is somebody had called over the CB radio. There was something definitely different or mysterious about this individual. It was snowing quite heavily. The snow, I remember, was coming at the windshield at probably about a 45-degree angle. What had happened then is somebody had called over the CB radio, and he had a southern accent. Somebody perhaps from Alabama or Tennessee, that sort of thing. The driver indicated to me that he was pretty nervous driving in the snow because he'd never driven in the snow before. So I came upon a truck, asked him if that was possibly him, and he said yes, and I ended up driving around him, and he felt a little bit more settled and a little bit more comfortable following me. I remember telling him, I said, well, just follow my lights just to make sure that you're on the road. But if I drive into the ditch, don't follow my lights into the ditch, right? So I got a little bit of a chuckle out of that. About 15 minutes had passed. He was really dying for a coffee, so I told him, I said, well, we have a franchise up here at a service plaza. We ended up driving in there. I pulled my truck into the rest area, or the actual service plaza. It was pretty vacant for a Saturday evening. I think it had a lot to do with the blizzard. He pulled his rig directly in behind me, and I got out of my truck and met him. He had coveralls. He stood about 6'6", and we sat down. He had a sandwich, and to be quite honest with you, I can't recall what we really talked about. I think, if anything, we basically maybe have talked about the weather and road-related things, and that was primarily about it. He then took his hand, reached over, and touched my shoulder. At first I thought, well, what are you doing with your hand, you know, especially a complete stranger? And I felt the surge, or some sort of an energy just surging through my body. It was almost therapeutic. And at that same moment, this man said to me, well, don't worry. He said, you won't always be alone, and life will get better for you. I guess by my initial reaction is that my mouth dropped, and I looked at him and I thought, what are you, a mind reader? And who are you and where did you come from? Because we absolutely did not talk about myself or personal life. I never really even questioned the individual about what he was saying or what he was doing. I don't know why. I just felt extremely comfortable with this person. Throughout the day, I guess I got a little frustrated, a little agitated, thinking that, well, I just pretty much blew half of my weekend. And also feeling a little isolated and very much alone, because I thought I'm actually going to be going home. But being a single person, there was absolutely nobody waiting at home for me. So I kind of felt a little blue and sort of a combination of frustrated, that sort of thing. After finishing our coffee, we walked back outside, and it was still snowing outside. The gentleman got back into his truck. We agreed earlier that I was going to take him to the Toronto area, and because I had absolutely nothing better to do on a Saturday night, I was going to actually get him to follow me to the warehouse that he had to apparently deliver to. So I waited a couple of seconds for him to get back into his truck. I reached over and grabbed the CB radio. And I had asked him, I said, well, are you ready to go? And his exact words, and I'll never forget these. He told me, he said, well, I did what I had to do here. I will remain here, and may God bless you, and he will always be with you. And I thought, well, that's really strange. That's extremely odd. You spent the last half hour with me, having coffee, drinking coffee, following me on the highway, and then all of a sudden you just don't need my help anymore. So I thought, well, there's not really much I can do. I tried to be a good Samaritan and help this individual along. I released my air brakes, pulled the truck ahead about 10 feet or so, looked in my mirror, and I really thought I was not seeing right. The individual's truck had vanished. So I got out, went around over to the passenger side, and sure enough, he was gone. There's no way this individual could have driven around me or exited the parking lot without me actually seeing him. He vanished into thin air, him and his truck. I spoke to a friend of mine the next day, and she basically came up with an assumption, and she told me, she said, yeah, this individual is your guardian angel. And to be quite honest with you, I mean, I don't know. To me, that makes sense. I really, truly believe that things are meant for a reason in life. And for whatever particular reason, I really believe that this gentleman, or whoever, or whatever he is, entered my life to somehow let me know that everything was going to be okay.
The mysterious Good Samaritan was right. Things turned out okay, and Ron is no longer alone. Both Ron and Kelly's problems weren't life and death. To some, they might appear small in the grand scheme of things. But a seemingly divine visitor shows interest and comforts them anyway. Our theological expert, David Reed, notes that many people with small problems don't bother to pray because they think God has bigger fish to fry. But if guardian angels showed up to reassure Kelly and Ron, this may tell us that the heart of the universe notices all our troubles and does indeed care for all creatures, great and small.
You do meet people in your life for a reason. Whether you gain anything from it, I think it's basically primarily up to the individual. To be quite honest with you, seeing is believing. And unless you actually experience that yourself as an individual, it is hard to believe.
Since that time, I think everything has sort of settled down. The divorce difficulties passed, and my children have grown. I did date a few men. I never did see Raymond again. I can't explain how his car disappeared. And I do think about him. I do think about him a lot sometimes.